one of the reasons writing a book is so beneficial is simply because of clarity. When we find clarity in our message, then it's able to actually be taken from one person and transferred to another person and to another person to another person. People who struggle with clarity in their message, what they actually also struggle with is the ability for that message to be perpetuated. If I'm sitting talking to somebody and they tell me a super complex idea, I'm going to be mind blown, which is awesome. But if I can't go and repeat that super complex idea to the next person, then that message isn't going to spread. And so as we get more clarity when we're writing things down and identifying what exactly we want to accomplish out of our legacy, then that helps us build that legacy. Now, what are some resources for that clarity? There's a great, if you go to briantracy.com, he has a great section there on how to write a book, why to write a book. He actually has an online program to help you write a book. Another person that really first exposed me to the idea of writing a book, her name is Jen Foster. She's got multiple books that she's published. One of the books that has helped me that I've read of hers is The 7 Critical Mistakes When You're Choosing a Publisher for Your Book. And that's going to come down to how it's going to get out there, the materials that you're using, and how good of a book do you actually want. Do you want to create like a crappy little pamphlet, or do you want to actually create a book that's kind of nice and going to portray the message of your legacy, right? If you treat your book super crappy and just use cheap materials, then the person who's reading that is going to be thinking, wow, this is a cheap legacy. If you have that bound in gold, it doesn't matter what's inside the book. People are going to be like, wow, he really cares about his legacy, right? And those are two very extremes. I'm not saying you have to choose one or the other, but just be aware how you bind your book, how it's presented on the page, how many words a page, how easy is it to read. All those things are going to play into whether that book actually is able to effectively carry your legacy into the future generations and the people around you, even in this generation. How is that going to help? And so that is one thing that I wanted to clarify there is how can we really make sure that we are being clear, and where do we get the information to do that? So Brian Tracy, great resource, and then Jen Foster, you can look her up on Instagram or Facebook. She helps people publish a lot of things. I first met her at a conference, and up until this point, I had a goal of writing a book, but I just didn't know where to start. I was kind of struggling with what my message was. How would I do this? It's going to take forever, I thought. I was struggling with my mindset on it. Well, what she broke down for me was a good book. Really, each chapter, for the common reader today, they want shorter chapters. So a chapter should only have 5 to 10 pages at most in it anyways. And 5 pages of a 5x7 book is really like 3, maybe 3 Word document pages if it's just single space, right? So it's really not that much. We've all done that in college. We've all been able to do that. If you do that 6 or 7 times, well, now you've got a 150 page book that you could bind and present to somebody. Now, making sure your message is clear, that's another area that she helped me with. So if you have a topic that you want, and then you want to break down maybe 4 or 5 subsections of that topic, then in each of those subsections, you break that down another one time, and then you just write 2 or 3 paragraphs on each subsection. And then you have maybe 3 main sections, and then you have each chapter. And when you do that, that simplifies the process. It's way less overwhelming. What if you only needed to write a paragraph or 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs a day, right? I write in my journal every morning, and I generally write about an 8x11 sheet of writing in my journal every morning. It takes me about 30 minutes to write that with my hand. I can type way faster than I can write with my hand, and I can talk into my computer and let it type for me way faster than I can even type. And that was another thing that she mentioned, was too many people get this writer's block when they're trying to write it down. What's often more effective is just talk your book and then let it record through speech, through text. And then once you've accomplished that, then you go back and edit it and trim it up and make sure it's presentable. But you don't have to struggle through the actual typing of it and get caught up in all the little details and the grammatical errors and all those things. Don't worry about that initially. Just get the content down on pieces of paper. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and about 150 to 200 page audiobook is only 3 hours long. And that's from somebody reading it. And in my opinion, they read it slow, much slower than I talk, right? If I asked you, what are you absolutely passionate about? More passionate about anything, and you could talk for hours of it. Maybe it's your sports knowledge. You just know all this facts and different things about the history and the ratios and the percentages of stuff of a football team, whatever it is. Maybe it's something that you know about neuro-linguistic programming. Maybe it's about technology. Maybe it's about social media. Maybe it's about horses. Maybe it's about dogs. Maybe it's about kids. Maybe it's about how to fold laundry. It doesn't really matter. What's important is no matter where you're at, you could talk for 3 hours on a subject. If you were explaining simply what you do on a daily basis for your career, or as a mother, or as a child, or as a daughter or son, brother, sister, if you were explaining that to somebody who had no concept of what that is, right? Do you think you could spend 3 hours explaining what that is, explaining the relations, explaining the emotions, explaining what it takes to actually get to where you're at? I believe that you could do that, and you could spend 3 hours talking about it. If you can spend 3 hours talking about it, and from an educational perspective, help somebody get from point A to point B in that 3 hours conversation, then you can write a book. And that sent light bulbs, firecrackers off my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I can write a book. That gave me the confidence to believe in myself. I have enough knowledge. I know enough things about a specific topic that I can write a book. I love finance, and I'm absolutely passionate about it. But what I'm more passionate about than finance is the mental application of how to attract finances into your life, how to attract money into your life, how to bring your life into closer harmony, not just with the financial aspect, but the faith, the family, the fitness, and then what it takes from a mentality standpoint, a feeling standpoint, a heart place standpoint, what it takes to really build a legacy. And I've read a lot of books. I've had my own opinions. And so now I'm there able to share my opinions. And I was able to write a book. It doesn't have to be a long book, and I'm going to develop it over this next year into a 100 to 200 page book. But that gave me the confidence and the know-how that, like, wow, I can do this. So Jen Foster, thank you for that. But I think it's important that each of us understand we can all write a book. And like I said, on Monday, I've already written many books when it comes to my journals, and I'm sure you have too. What if you just went and collected the funniest stories or the most heartfelt stories or whatever out of your journal, reread it, and said, hey, I'm going to take this story, I'm going to maybe make it more presentable, but I'm going to take this story and publish it into a book. I'm going to publish this into a book and publish this into a book. You've probably already written a book. You just need an editor, right? So think in terms of how can you accomplish this rather than all the things that are holding you back. Think of, hey, what have I already done to accomplish this? So that's the first thing. So clarity, confidence is a huge thing of why to write a book. If you write a book and you're able to publish that, think of how much more confident you would be in your message, right? You've written this book, you've published it to the world. Now everybody knows what you're about in this life. Everybody knows what legacy you're trying to portray. Now, this is something that comes to my mind often. Well, what if my legacy changes? What if I write a book and I feel one way, and then in 5, 10 years from now, I feel a little bit different? Well, there's a few options. One, you can bring out a new edition of the book with the edits in it, or you can write a whole new book, or you could write a book that is an edit, a commentary of your old book, all the things you liked and didn't like about your past vision or legacy, right? So there's so many directions you can go with this. Even if things change, that's okay. What matters is, are you putting down what's really in your heart? Are you being authentic today? And as you do that, your confidence will rise. People will start to respect you more. And if you're in business and you write a book about your profession, whether it's roofing, roofing electronics, being a CEO, not being a CEO, being a grunt worker, laborer, working at Walmart as a store attendant, I promise you those people have plenty of stories to tell. If they just made a book of like the secret life of a Walmart cashier and they started telling stories about the things that they've seen, that would be hilarious. And I would read that book just for the comic content. So there really, it doesn't matter what you're writing about, I guess is my point. But for me, why is it important to write a book about my legacy and what I want to achieve? And that is because I want to be able to leave it for my posterity. I don't want to pass away and my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren not know who I was or what I was about, the things that I stood for, the morals that I had, the values that I had, and how I went and helped many other people. So I don't want to lose that. And so it's important to me that I'm able to share that with other people.